Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to crochet the offset mesh stitch pattern, sometimes called the offset filet mesh. I'll be using Lion Brand's Vanna's Choice and a furls hook in the size K. Let me set this aside and show you a finished swatch that features the offset mesh. You can see, if you've got an experienced eye for crochet, that it's a series of double crochets and chain ones with the next row being worked in the chain space. It's a very simple pattern. It makes a nice mesh, especially if you work it with a bigger hook than the yarn calls for. You can get a really nice light drapey fabric. And you can see this stitch pattern featured in the free Seaside Ruana pattern that's on mooglyblog.com. So let's get started. To make this stitch, you'll begin with an odd number of chains. Sorry about that, my yarn got caught here. There we go. So I'm going to put my hook right back in my loop. Whenever you put your hook back in a loop that you've pulled it out of, make sure that the part that moves of that loop is in front, facing you. See how the one in front moves there? That's the one we want. So I know my hook's in there the right direction. So as I said, we start with an odd number of chains. Here I've got a chain of 15. You can work into the chain in your preferred method. I prefer to work in that underneath that back bump underneath there for my first row. So to begin, I know I'll be making a double crochet, so I'm going to go ahead and yarn over, but first I'm going to count out 6 stitches that I'm going to skip. I'll be skipping the 6 chains closest to the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm going to skip all of those and go into the one after that. Now, that's a double crochet right there. The 6 chains that I've skipped count as a skip one, a double crochet, and a chain one, like so. There we have it. All right, now we begin the regular stitch pattern. So I'm going to chain one, skip the next one, and double crochet in the stitch after that. And that's our repeat for the first row. We chain one, skip one, and double crochet in the next stitch. And we're going to continue that all the way across. If you have counted your chains correctly, you should end with a double crochet in the very last chain. Unless, of course, you're putting this inside something else fancy, then who knows what your ends will look like. But if you're just doing offset mesh, you should end with a double crochet in the last chain. There we go. Like so. That's row 1. Let's begin row 2. Row 2 is a little bit different. I'm going to chain 3, which counts as our first double crochet, like so. Then I'm going to work the first regular double crochet, I guess the second double crochet of the row you could say, into the chain space. Not going into the actual chain, but in the chain space underneath. Like so. So rather than having a chain one in between these two, they're right next to each other. So I'm going to chain one, skip the next stitch, and go into the next chain one space with a double crochet. And that's what I'll do across for row 2. Chain one, skip the stitch, and work into the chain one space. And we do that all the way across so that when we come here to the end, you can see we've got our 6 that we skipped. I'm going to go ahead and chain one, skip that last one, work right in there with our double crochet, and then I'm going to work another double crochet in this stitch right here. So we're going to skip the one closest to this double crochet, that chain right there, and work in the top of that chain right there, because that's going to count as the top of our double crochet, the first double crochet in round 1. There we have it. And that is the end of row 2. Now you can see row 2 will always have one more double crochet than row 1 and one less chain 1 space. So if you're counting your stitches, that's a good guide. So let's begin row 3. I'm going to pull up a little bit more yarn here. And this is a pretty color. It's called Sapphire. I love that. Okay, so let's begin row 3. We're going to chain 4 to begin row 3. Like so. That's going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1 when we count our stitches. So then I'm going to skip that first one, of course. I'm going to skip the one after that, and I'm going to go into that chain space. So that's one of the things I love about this pattern. You're always working into the chain space, except for when you're working into the top of a chain. And it really goes pretty quickly because you don't have to fiddle about trying to find exactly where to stick the hook. You just get to go right in that big chain space there. So if you've seen other videos where I've made a mesh where the double crochets line up, this is just sort of an offshoot of that where they're offset and you're working into the chain spaces instead. So you can see I still did a chain one, skip one, go in the chain space. Now we've come to the end of row 3. So what I'm going to do is skip that double crochet right there that was working in the chain space below. I've still got my chain 1. Then I'm going to go in the top of this chain 3. The one time you have to go into a stitch is at the end of each row. There we have it. Alrighty. And that's the end of row 3. So from there, to continue with this pattern, you just keep repeating rows 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2 and 3. Depending on your pattern, you might end with a row 2, you might end with a row 3. Doesn't really matter, it's just whatever you prefer. If we look at our larger swatch here, you can see I just kept going, and this one I decided to end on a row 2 repeat. So we've got 2 on each end. You get a really nice fabric with the offset mesh. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a like, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.